Remake Rewind.
Thank you for listening to Remake Rewind, the podcast where we decided if remakes or reboots should have happened. I'm Mike, as always, and with me I've got my two co-hosts. I've got Alice. How are you doing, Alice?
Okay.
He's also known as Alex, but he asked for a nickname, and he provided his nickname. He requested that we call him Alice.
I don't know that he requested it.
He didn't request it.
He requested it by saying he wanted a nickname, and then you provided it, Double D. If he just kept his damn mouth shut, this never would have happened. And, of course, we got Double D, a.k.a. David, a.k.a. Double D. What's up, bud?
Just doing a podcast. How about you?
I'm doing a podcast, I guess.
Oh, that's cool. What a coincidence.
Yep. So, what are we going to be covering this week, guys?
Alex, why don't you tell us since you picked it?
We're going to be doing LA Takedown and Heat.
So, Heat is one of the, I think it's like top 30 movies of all time, like in like the 500s or something like that. So, I read somewhere in the top 500 movies of all time. I think it's ranked in the 30s somewhere.
Solid.
Michael Mann directed this movie, and it's most famous because it's the first time that Al Pacino and Robert De Niro actually acted against each other. So arguably two of the best actors of all time had been in movies together before, but they never shared any scenes. So, most notably The Godfather Part 2, they're both in that movie, but because of the continuity, it's like 40 years in the, prior. So Robert De Niro never actually shared some screen time with Al Pacino. So this was a big deal that, they were in a movie together. And this one was actually advertised as, the showdown between Pacino and De Niro. So this movie's huge, and most people don't know that it's a remake in a loose term, and that it was a remake of a TV movie that was supposed to be a TV series, but ended up just being a pilot that they revamped to be a TV movie. So LA Takedown was supposed to be a TV show in like 1986 that Michael Mann was doing, and then it became a TV movie in like 89, and then they made basically a remake of that in the form of Heat. So pretty interesting kind of history for the movie. I've got a little bit tidbits here and there, but essentially it was a 180-page script. They only did 110 pages of it for the TV movie, and then they did the whole 180-page script for the movie. So
that makes sense.
Especially once you watch these movies, you can definitely see the similarities and the differences. But there's a lot that is the same. And,
a lot.
Yeah, we put a lot of time into this one because Heat was almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
2 hours and 50 minutes.
Yeah, damn. And then
that's a lot of time.
LA Takedown was like 92 minutes, but it felt longer.
Oh, yeah.
So, what is your guys' histories with this movie? Have you guys seen either of these before?
I've seen Heat a long time ago. I don't really remember anything from it, but I did not even know LA Takedown existed.
What about you, Alex?
I actually haven't seen any of these, and I only found out LA Takedown was a remake of Heat because of I was like watching a video essay about it.
Reverse that.
Oh, right.
LA Takedown was not a remake of Heat.
the other way around.
Yeah, Heat's been on my list of movies to watch for a long time, since about 2007. When I worked at Target, I remember seeing a DVD cover of it, because in 2005 they came out with a special edition of the movie. So like in 99 it came out on DVD, but it was bare bones, didn't have any special features, didn't even have like a menu on it. It was just the movie on DVD. And then in 2005 they released the special edition, which had like the audio commentary. And I remember seeing it and going, I know it was a big deal, and it had Val Kilmer on the cover, and I was like, maybe I should watch this, and I never got around to it. So it's been on my list of stuff to watch for like 12 years.
It's a long time.
That's why I kind of jumped on it when Alice suggested it.
Have you just not made it that far down the list, or did you skip it multiple times?
Well, no, there's just, things come up, and, it wasn't one that was readily available on streaming, and then just, new movies and working, and,
so
when I was
you're
younger,
saying is movies took priority over Heat.
Yeah, new movies did. I liked going to the movies, and, when I've almost watched it several times, and then once we started the podcast, I actually did know that it was a remake pretty early on into the podcast. I have like a list of remakes, and I just figured someday I would watch it for the podcast. So
well, it happened.
It happened. And who's got a synopsis for the first one?
I'm doing it. There's only one, and it is very short and from Anonymous. All right, you ready?
I'm ready. Born ready.
Tough Los Angeles cop Vincent Hanna takes on a gang of professional bank robbers led by the precise, enigmatic Patrick McLaren.
Yep.
That is all.
So-
I mean, it's pretty summative of the TV movie.
I do have to ask, watching this, I know. So this was set up as a pilot. Like this is all that there was. It's not like it was a TV show that was re-edited down to a movie. Like this was meant to be the pilot. So my question is, after watching this, like where was it supposed to go? Was it going to be Vincent, a new case every week, or was it going to be when they realized it wasn't going to make it as a series, they ended up killing the villain? I mean, I'm spoiling that right away, but like his foil, McLaren, does die. Like all the criminals die in this one, except for actually no, one of them survives, but we don't really know exactly what happens to him. But was this originally going to be like a series of them constantly going toe to toe with each other?
Yeah, I feel like that's what it was, and eventually the end of the movie was going to be the end of this series.
Right. Because that's the only, I am curious as to how it was supposed to be set up. Because watching this, I don't see how it would have been a series unless it was the same villain and the same cop every episode, or if it was the cop doing like a new case every week. Because then it wouldn't have been really anything special.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, it should have been. I mean, because he's supposed to be like a great, it's supposed to be a great crew in general. So I feel like he would have just been hot on the heels, and they would have faced off multiple times, and eventually would have died.
So this movie, and it's hard to. I use the term movie loosely. You can tell that it was made for TV. Like the production values are kind of whack.
Oh god, dude, it was so bad.
Really bad.
Well, what's weird is
the way it began.
Yeah, like
I totally thought it was like a crappy porno.
David texted me. He's like, "Alex, did you download a porno by accident?"
What am I
It does
watching?
start out with that, like the weird being in bed, and then the weird shower, and the music was just like 80s guitar riffs, like. Like, it's almost everything almost sounded like Careless Whisper kind of thing. But what's weird about it is, it says they clearly never even changed the credits from when they thought it was going to be a pilot, because as you're watching the opening credits, it says like special guest star, which is something you would only do if it's somebody who's not regularly in it, and there's going to be more to it down the line. So like clearly they never actually changed the credits from when they thought it was going to be a TV show. It's really
guest
strange.
Star of the movie.
Right. So the movie basically starts with a weird love scene in a shower, but it's like shot from outside the glass, and so it's getting foggy and it's super blurry. Really weird.
I thought that was just the movie.
Part of it.
So bad.
It's just like Vincent, and then like she asks to take like the wife
Take
who
me
I
to
don't
breakfast.
take me to breakfast, and he's just like, okay. And then it goes to the main robbery of the movie, like the one where we're introduced to the
big
crew.
heist.
And what's weird about this movie is, and this is kind of I put this note at the beginning so I'd remember to say it. It's about 30 minutes into the movie before you get most of the main cast. So you get Vincent right away because the woman's moaning his name. And then, but it's not until 30 minutes into the movie. This is a 92-minute movie. 30 minutes in is when you actually hear all the bad guys' names. So we find out that McLaren's name is Patrick maybe 20 minutes in when he's at like a bar. But it's not until about 30, 40 minutes in when they're doing like, the whole twist is, how they find out who they are. We find out that Michael and Chris are the other gangster names. It's not until an hour and 15 minutes in, so when there's 15 minutes left, where we find out like the main bad guy's name, who's like both the cop and Patrick McLaren are going against. An hour and 15 minutes before we find out Wayne Grove's name. It's insane.
Wait, was it really an hour and 15 minutes?
Yeah, I checked. Like, I went back and watched part of it because I knew their names ahead of time because I did a little bit of research on both the movie and the TV movie, and I knew the character's name, but I was just like waiting for them to actually say the name, and like Wayne Grove's name didn't come up until an hour and 15 minutes in. You didn't hear Michael or Chris's name until 30 minutes in. Us not knowing any of the characters' names is insane.
It's a
But-
great movie.
So does somebody want to? What are some highlights for you guys or lowlights?
The ending was a great highlight. Yes, no, actually, the ending where they kind of got all
The-
crossed around.
Before
And,
Yeah,
before
Waingro
that,
killed
I-
McLaren.
I just want to talk about Patrick's the villain, right? I already forgot.
Well,
Yeah.
Patrick, I mean, yes and no. Like he's arguably like the second lead, but like the main villain. I mean, the villain of the whole thing overall is Waingro.
But he
it's
has,
just like the
he
guy's performance
was missing
though.
half the movie.
Like there's a scene in Delivery where he's like talking about like, oh, Edie, let's go to New Zealand. Yeah, like I was like that felt weird. Like he's like, where do you want to go? New Zealand. I'm like, it's just a weird delivery compared to the remake. The remake, I was like, I was like, oh yeah, Robert Deniro really wants to go to New Zealand. It's just weird,
Right.
like the delivery how he gave things, and then they also changed how him and Vincent meet up, which is interesting how they change it in the new one too. It's like little things. I feel that Michael Mann, he like had like a rough idea what he wanted to do, and then he just like improved upon it, which is really
Well, that's what he
interesting.
said. So he had a script done in the late 70s. So the script was done like almost 10 years before he even made this show or a TV movie. And then he went through and he said this, he's kind of happy. So one of the things he said was it was filmed in 1995 and had a 6-month pre-production and 117-day shooting schedule. LA Takedown was done in 1989, had a 10 days of pre-production and a 19-day shooting schedule. So he said the one is like comparing freeze-dried coffee to Jamaican Blue Mountain. And so it was also a 180-page screenplay that predated both LA Takedown and Heat. That was written in the 70s. And then when they made it into a TV movie version, they abridged it down to about 110 pages, making the TV movie not like he's saying you cannot compare the two to each other, which I disagree because so much of it is the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a direct remake up to a certain point.
Right. Well, so the thing about this movie is the thing that was hard is so the lead actor who played Vincent, I don't remember his name right now. He's dead. He died in a car accident in like 2002.
Snap.
Yeah, he was actually in the movie Holes, and he died before the movie came out. But his delivery, especially in the famous like diner scene where they actually like have their little like, hey, you're a pretty good criminal. You probably shouldn't be a criminal, but I respect you because you're a lot like me. And the criminal is like, you're a pretty good cop, and I wish you weren't a cop because you're a lot like me. But if I have to kill you, I'll kill you. You know that scene.
No hesitation.
No hesitation. He came off so much like the Ben Affleck shitty era of acting, like 2000.
He kind of looked like Ben Affleck.
A little bit, like I guarantee, like I feel like if Ben Affleck was around 30 years earlier, this would have been him.
Oh,
Like
for sure.
his delivery was so much like it, like his role in like Paycheck, really any of his movies, between Reindeer Games, from like Daredevil on until he came back and started doing things like The Town, all those movies that he did before he was considered a good actor again, that guy sounded exactly like shitty Ben Affleck.
Which exactly what he looked like.
He looks like he could be like his cousin or something.
Yeah, for sure. He could be his
Yeah,
little brother.
Casey
Could
Affleck.
So the thing about this movie, and I feel like what we should do is probably go into the second movie earlier than we normally would, just because we're going to be comparing it. But the thing about this movie is like, it's definitely looks like a TV movie.
Oh, yeah.
To the point where like at the end of the movie, after they kind of have their little talk and they end up meeting each other at the bank robbery. The bank robbery doesn't go smoothly, and they have the big firefight. Yeah, it gets really weird at this point. So basically, at the end of the movie, right after the bank robbery kind of goes bad, there's a huge gunfight. Some of them get in like a car and they drive off. Our lead, Vincent, follows him and ends up losing them at one point. So then the other cops are like doing a foot chase with one of the other cops or with one of the other villains, right?
Yeah.
And somehow Vincent just gets back in that chase and is ahead of them. And it's the classic scenario where like the bad guy will get a hostage. And so he has like a rifle or a shotgun or something. And then this bad guy picks up a kid and then he puts his rifle down, pulls out his pistol, shoots the guy in the head.
In the face while he's carrying the child.
While he's carrying a child.
Yeah.
And it's not like, that's ridiculous. And it happens in a lot of movies. I just didn't like that.
I hated that.
I hated that. And it happens in movies all the time. But most of the time it's built up like that person is like a hot shot or a sharpshooter or something.
Nope.
Before they do that.
Just
To
a
have
great detective sergeant, whatever
Right.
he was.
Well, and they also mentioned he's homicide multiple times in this movie, but here he is on taking line on like this guy. And it's like, yes, technically people died. And I think we're jumping around. We probably should go back to the beginning of the movie and talk about that heist. But Jesus, this movie's weird.
It was a rough watch.
God damn.
Rough watch.
It's
So
sorry. Because like I was reading, I think I was reading a Wikipedia about this movie, and people were saying like, "Oh, this movie is compared unfavorably to Heat," and I'm watching it, and I was like, I don't know if I would like it, like just on its own, not even knowing it's like there's a better version.
yeah,
of
it's
this.
not a good
It's
movie.
just-
So one of
yeah.
the other things is just like that really bothered me, and they do carry this forward into the remake. In Heat is so there's they rob an armored truck at the beginning of the movie, and they're set up to be these big professionals because they leave the cash and they only take the bearer bonds, right? But they work with this guy named Waingro, who they've never worked with before. And Waingro, like there's this one security guard who's just kind of like smiling at them, and Waingro just decides to shoot him for no reason. So then when he goes to shoot the first guard, a second guard decides to fight back. So now Michael, who's, like the number 2 guy in the crew, ends up having to kill the second guy. And then, like, the third guy looks really afraid. There's a third guard. And they just, like, at that point, they kill him because, there's no difference. And Vincent says that. He goes, yeah, it looks like they weren't planning on killing anybody, but for some reason they killed a guy. And at that point, once they killed one of them, there was no difference between killing all 3 because now they're going to get a murder rap. Okay, I get that. But why did they need to work with Waingro? This didn't seem like that fourth person really made a big difference in this job.
No, because there was at least 2 people guarding the hostages, right?
Right, and there's only one in the truck. So, like, the thing that didn't really make sense to me, they talk about in this movie, even at the beginning, like, when Waingro goes to talk to him, he goes, like, oh, man, if this goes well, I would love to work with you guys again. You guys do a lot of jobs together, right? And they're like, yeah, we do a lot of jobs, just us, kind of thing. Why would they get a fourth guy that they've never worked with before for this job?
Yeah.
So that didn't really make sense. So what really drove the plot of this movie is obviously the cop or cat and mouse game between Vincent and Patrick. But the other thing that kind of happened was they're only getting half their money right away, and they're supposed to get half their money later on. And Patrick decides that all 3 of the main crew are going to take a smaller cut just so they can pay off Waingro, give him his full cut, and just cut him loose, right?
Yep.
And everything seemed fine. Waingro was, he was a little annoyed about it, but he understood. But then for some reason, like, he touches Patrick on the shoulder, and Patrick fucking loses it, and he decides he's going to kill the guy, right? Mm-hmm. And then, cop car drives by, so they stop, and then the guy's just mysteriously gone. So because they almost tried to kill him, Waingro decides that he wants revenge. So there's this, like, subplot where he's killing prostitutes, but it was edited very poorly. So there's a point where they find a prostitute, and Vincent's, like, super pissed. And he says something along the lines of, like, I'd like to think that I made a difference, some difference, even if you need an electronic microscope to measure it. But some difference. Tonight I made no difference. And he's super pissed that this, like, prostitute died. Right?
Yep.
And then later on in the movie, we see Waingro with a prostitute, and he gets physical with her. And it's supposed to be implied that he killed the first prostitute. But it would have made more sense if we saw the prostitute scene, him with the prostitute roughing her up first, and it being the prostitute that we saw him with is the one that's killed. But that's not the case. So that was a little weird. But then he decides he wants revenge, so he tracks down the crew's driver, like getaway driver, and decides to torture and kill them so that way he would know exactly what's going on. It wasn't really well explained. Like somehow he was able to get all the information about the heist. The guy, Waingro ends up calling the bank to warn them that they were going to get robbed. And because of that, everybody gets killed. And Patrick decides at the end of the movie, like he's pretty much free. Like he gets away from the cops. He has his like passports. He's going to go to New Zealand. But then Vincent decides to set up a trap at this hotel that Waingro inexplicably goes to a hotel for some reason. And Patrick goes to kill Waingro, and Vincent goes and's like, "Don't do it. Why'd you fall for this? You're so stupid. You could have been free." And then while they're talking, Waingro shoots him through the door with a shotgun. And you see him go flying across the hall.
That was great.
Which, whatever. But then, like, they go and get him, and he's like, "Why did you do that? You could have been free." And he's like, "They don't build doors like they used to." And then Vincent, the cop, goes, "They don't build anything like they used to." And then they kind of have like a tender moment. And then they go in to the hotel room to get Waingro, and he's like, "This was self-defense.
He's like, yeah.
I want that in the record. And, I didn't do anything wrong. It was justified." And then Vincent goes, "Yeah, the guy that you called the bank to tell them they were going to get robbed so you can get a reward. They told us, and that led us to the getaway driver. So we now know you killed." They don't have any evidence that he did that.
He doesn't know that.
He doesn't know that.
And so at that point, but he's gonna arrest him, and it's like they don't have any evidence to that. So like the fact that he was gonna arrest, like that wouldn't have held up. And the guy's like, "I want to call my lawyer." He should have just let him do that. But so the guy Waingro ends up pulling a gun. And instead of like pulling his gun,
he kicks him.
Yeah, he does like a round kick, kicks the guy out the window, which is something that happens in TV shows all the time. And like that's
Kicks
the
him
end of the
out
movie.
window.
So I was actually
Like,
thinking that, like, I've had a moment where, like, because of movies where I've seen people like fall against a window and fall out. So when I was a kid, I accidentally tripped and I fell on a hotel window, and my heart raced so much.
You thought you were gonna fly out.
I thought I was gonna fly out.
Just gonna crack like sugar glass and fly down.
So one time I kicked my brother into a window.
Did it break?
It broke. It was weird. So we had like dual pane windows in the apartment that we grew up in. But my brother had this T-Rex puppet from Jurassic Park 2: The Lost World. And it was like a hard plastic one, and it had teeth. And one day, like, we're chilling in our bedroom, and he just like grabs my crotch with it and like chomps down. And it has these plastic. So you like, it fucking hurts. So as soon as he let go, like just in reflex, I fucking kicked him, and I was on my back, and he went flying, and he hit the window, and it broke. What's weird is like the outer pane broke, not the inner pane.
What the hell?
And my dad comes in, and he like is like yelling at us and screaming at us and everything like that. And so like, man, we were in trouble. And then like a couple hours later, like, I don't even remember what our punishment was initially. I think he was so pissed he like didn't even punish us right away. And then I explained what happened, and I ended up not getting in trouble. But then like what was terrible is there was this little kid who grew up in our neighborhood who was always, what he would always do is he'd come up to people's windows and talk to them through the window, right? So my dad ended up blaming the broken window on this little kid because it was broken on the outside, not the inside. So he went to the building manager, like the building office, and was like, "Hey, one of our windows is broken on the outside. We think it might have been this little kid. We don't want him to get in trouble, but he's always coming to the windows and talking to my kids. So we think he might have like tried to tap on the window when we weren't home to see if we were home and broke the window on accident." So my dad totally got the window replaced for free because he blamed.
Solid play, Dad. Happy Father's Day.
So the other issue I had with the police work in this movie, so they talk about how professional these guys are using shaped charges. They were in and out in X amount of time. The only clue that they have to go on is there was a homeless guy or a janitor from across the street. I can't remember in this one.
Heard him say sport.
Heard him say sport. They heard one of the robbers say the word sport. And everybody acts like they've never heard of anybody calling anybody sport before. They're like, "That's weird. Get to the FBI. That can't be that uncommon. That can't be common. We'll find them." And then later on, they just find some, informant who happens to have a cousin who heard about this, and he was like, yeah, this guy kept calling everyone sport. And because of that, they're able to devote all these resources. Like, they get all 3 of these people bugged. They have helicopter surveillance. They're able to get 24-hour surveillance. Like, that's for like a bank, for what amounts to, you know, I think they said this was something like $50,000 worth of bearer bonds or something like that. Like, it wasn't an outrageous amount of money. Yes, 3 people died. That's awful. But they devote this amount of resources based off somebody hearing this guy say sport. That would never happen.
Maybe there wasn't a lot of crime back then.
In Los Angeles in the late 80s? That was like super dangerous back then. Like, that was when we were between there and like 95 was one of the most violent eras in Los Angeles history. That's what, you know, prior to the Los Angeles riots. You know, this was like a super dangerous time. And as the Vincent said, he'd like to think he makes a difference, but people are microwaving babies and shit. So
Yeah, that was crazy.
Oh yeah.
this movie also had like a subplot where his wife was just mad that he works all the time,
and
then like beats up a guy that like hits on her, and like he did get physical with his wife. Like, I think he was justified punching the guy out. But she gets pissed. She's like, "You're always just finding ways to get in fights over me." And it's like we see one example of this. But yeah, it's a pretty shitty movie.
I agree.
Yeah.
It definitely felt longer than 92 minutes.
It was hard to watch.
And like that scene where they meet, you know, I mean, I wrote down word for word what they said, and it's a good scene. It's just, yeah, these actors are so shitty, and they had like this weird guitar riff the entire time.
Well, the way they first meet is hilarious though, because like, isn't he just doing his dry cleaning? And he looks across, he's like, "Oh shit, it's the guy."
Buy you a cup of coffee.
Yep. Well, I mean, it's not any better in the second one. Like,
I mean,
much
pulls
the
him
same
over.
thing.
I
Yeah, he
kind
just
of like
pulls
the
him over.
second one. We'll talk about it once we get into it.
Yeah, but like, I just want to read the cops' lines to Patrick during this infamous like scene. He goes, you know, they both basically say, you know, neither are gonna stop. I don't know how to do anything else. And then the others, neither do I. So he goes, if I'm there when you're coming out of a score, I'll blow you out of your socks. I won't like it, but I won't think twice about it, because if the wife of some poor bastard you killed is going to be made into a widow, you're going to go down, because you don't know how have to be here, man. You could be a mailman. So later on, Patrick is, you know, he basically said something along the lines of, when he goes to Edie and Edie finds out he's a criminal after, you know, being on the news, you know, he says something along the lines, she's like, "You killed a cop." He's like, "He didn't have to be there. He knew what the risk was. He could have been a mailman." He just like took the line from, you know, the cop. It was a little weird. And they also, Point Break, I think, definitely took something from this movie. Like the way they handled the bank robbery scenes in Point Break. And they even have a line like, "We're not here for your money. This money is insured." You know, Point Break says the exact same thing at all the bank robberies. And Point Break came out after this and before Heat. So I think Point Break definitely, whoever wrote Point Break probably saw this and took some stuff from it.
On TV.
All right.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to Heat.
Okay, that'll be
1995 Heat.
that'll be me. This is from Derek. All right,
Zoolander.
Derek Zoolander. In Los Angeles, a gang of armed thieves is hitting serious targets: major banks, vaults, and armored cars. These thieves are led by arch-criminal Neil McAuley. One of their operations, an armored car robbery, goes bad, and the armored car guards are murdered by the gunman, putting LAPD homicide detective Vince Hanna on the trail of the thieves. Hanna knows it will take a lot to bring these dangerous armed thieves down, and it will end in a horrifying gun battle when the thieves try to rob a major federal bank. That's from Derek.
Thanks, Derek. So, like I said, this is the first movie that has Robert De Niro and Al Pacino acting together, and this was a huge part of the marketing. This movie was highly anticipated. It like cost $60 million to make. It made like $67 million here in the United States, and then it made like $187 million worldwide. So this was a hit, commercial and critical. It didn't get any awards or anything like that, but you know, this was a hit, and it's, you know, people love this movie. I think I probably would have liked this movie a lot more if I didn't watch
LA Takedown.
LA Takedown.
I was thinking the same, actually. Yeah, like
because it's not a bad movie. I also think it is a little dated. Like, Al Pacino's hard to take. This is kind of like right around the time Al Pacino really started with his hoo-ah, kind of like screaming
he's
everything.
taking it up another. He's like, when he does that scene delivery of a great ass, I was like, oh, this is where it came from.
So the thing is,
Yeah.
I think some of the things maybe we should talk about just really quickly is some of the things that they changed. So we do get a lot, because this is, at least 70 pages more of script than the LA Takedown. We do get a lot more of like the criminal's background. We see some of their family. So in this, Val Kilmer plays Chris. Why am I blanking on his name right now? I know this guy.
John Voight?
Katrina's worked. Not John Voight.
Tom Sizemore.
Tom Sizemore. Thank you. So Tom Sizemore, Katrina's actually worked with on a TV show. He actually ran somebody over on the set of Shooter. Yep.
Did
But
they use that footage?
I have no idea. But he plays Michael, the guy who instead of saying sport, he says slick in this one. So same thing. It's a little dumb that's ultimately how they get taken down. This one, we get a lot more into, like I said, the family. So we have Vincent Hanna, played by Pacino. He is married, and this is his third marriage. Now, obviously, he is much older than the original actor, and Robert De Niro is much older than the original it's Patrick McCollin versus Neil McCauley. Vincent has now, this is his third marriage. He has a stepdaughter who is mentally disturbed, who tries to kill herself at one point. And his wife has an affair on him. One of the criminals, played by Val Kilmer, Chris, his wife is is trying to get out of the marriage and is kind of having like a phone sex affair with Hank Azaria, who's from Vegas. And this one we do see a couple heists. So we do see the the same one, the armored truck heist. We see them set up a heist at like a steel mill, and then which they ultimately abandon, and then the big bank heist. Some of the other things we get is Neil does get his revenge on Waingro, but there's also like a bunch of extra supporting characters. So we have one of you guys brought up John Voight. He plays like their fence, but there's another subplot where like the bearer bonds that they get, they decide to sell back to the guy. So the guy who they stole from is a money launderer, so they want to sell the bearer bonds back to the money launderer, played by William Fichtner. He actually is the one who like hires Waingro to go back and try to get these guys killed, so that way people don't think it's okay to steal from him. So Double D, what do you like to say about movies like this?
It's the unabridged version.
It's the unabridged version. So they just added some of these random subplots, some of which I don't think really added anything. Like the whole thing with Natalie Portman as the stepdaughter, I don't think it added anything to the
pointless.
movie.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I guess it added to
like,
Vincent Hanna's stress, right? But that was almost irrelevant.
Well, stress and more like it shows that you can he cares about something, because like his relationship with his wife is pretty rough. But you see, like, he picks up Natalie Portman and he takes care of her and stuff like that.
I don't get, like, clearly they have a sexual relationship and they love each other, him and his wife. And she says something along the lines of, like, you just use me for sex or something like that. But I don't know. It just felt like even the subplot with his wife cheating on him didn't really seem to add much to it.
Waingro from the...
With the original Waingro, yeah. It comes in, his name's Ralph, and he's, like, somebody that they know. But I don't feel like that really added much to it, other than like, yeah, he's got problems outside of being a cop. But I think the whole point of the character is like he's married to the job.
The only thing I can see is like it might be showing that it's like the opposite with Neo, where like Neo's relationship seems to be pretty good because it's just starting.
No, maybe.
And then Vincent's relationship is like, it's longer. He had it longer, but it's like deteriorating kind of thing. So they're kind of like opposites.
I guess so. Maybe. I'm willing to buy that. So the armored truck scene basically goes off the same way. They flip the truck with another bigger vehicle. Same. They do a little. I do like how they did this scene a little bit more. And once again, it's just better production values, better budget. Right. Yeah. Better actors, but they have it set up where you see the Vincent's in the armored truck getting the bearer bonds, and the other three guys are kind of like guarding the security guards from the armored truck. but you see them handling them a little bit more and like talking to the guards a little bit more, making them, stay in place. And then they kind of explain why the guy's looking at him funny. They're like, dude, they were just in an explosion. Their ears are bleeding because Waingro keeps like telling the guy to like stop smiling at him. And they're like, Waingro, he's deaf. Like his ears blew up. Like fucking chill, bro. And then it goes down pretty much the same way. Waingro decides to kill them. One of the big differences though is they immediately decide to kill Waingro. Like they still have the scene like, oh, we're just gonna pay you out. Come get the money. And then they get to the car and you open up the trunk and you see that it's lined with plastic. So they were just gonna kill Waingro. Where in the original movie, they were going to pay him off until Waingro decided to, like, touch Patrick, and Patrick fucking lost his mind. In this one, like, they were straight up going to kill him. Same thing, cop car drives by, and inexplicably, he's gone.
I think that makes more sense, though, that they're going to kill him immediately. Like,
oh, I agree.
Yeah.
It does make more sense.
Crew like that, you don't want those loose ends.
But once again, why did they need him for this job?
Maybe just
and they do the
local
same
knowledge?
thing, like, oh, you guys do all kinds of stuff together, right? And Tom Sizemore's like, yep, we pretty much only work with each other. Oh, cool, I'm really excited to work with you guys. Like, why? I don't understand why you needed this guy for this job. It's not like he brought anything to it. And you see that they're really meticulous. Like, they got everything planned to the second. Later on, we see a heist where, after they're being surveilled, but they don't quite know they're being surveilled. They're, breaking into this vault.
Oh, that was a
this,
great scene, actually. I really liked that.
No, it was a great scene. So, yeah, the cops are using, like, thermal cameras and everything like that. And De Niro just kind of has this feeling they're being watched. So he decides just to walk away from the job. And then the cops have to decide what
it's not
do.
even, like, so
he heard
he heard
right?
the cop with his rifle, when he sat down, made a thud sound. So, like, it just goes, like, you just hear this, as, like, they're all silent. They're like, oh, fuck, did he hear it? Did he hear it? And
right.
then, like, it goes up a couple of octaves. It's great. It's really great.
Yeah, there's not much to. I mean, yeah, he might have heard something, but there's no reason for him necessarily to think. But he just decides to walk away. So some of the cops are like, "Let's fucking get him." And like De Niro or Pacino as Vincent was like,
"What
are we gonna get him
Breaking
on?
entry?
Breaking and entering?
Yeah.
Like at best, that's a misdemeanor. At best, they'll get a couple of
6
months and then they're out."
Yeah.
You kind of think he's like, "No, we need to get him." And so some of the cops are pissed. Like that's a great scene, but once again, like here this guy is being an expert.
Yep.
And being professional and everything like that. Why would you take the chance on somebody like Waingro, who we see as like swastika tattoos and shit like that? Like, it just seems weird that they would even take the risk.
It would have made more sense if they had like prefaced it with like they lost a member on a previous job or something like that.
Right. Or that there was something special, like this guy was
Local knowledge expert or
right,
something.
or like a demolition spec because they need that the shape charge.
Right.
Or even if he had like an insight, like he worked for the armored truck, like
yeah.
anything that gave some, or he had access to the garbage truck that they used to flip the truck or whatever, any number of things. But yeah, they didn't give him any reason to. And that, I just didn't get it. Now, I do like that they spent a little bit more time with Waingro. Like, you actually see him, like, rough up a prostitute, and then that prostitute is the one that they find. Like, that made more sense. Yeah. They, I did like, I thought Val Kilmer was great in this. Like, they did stuff with him, like, same thing. Val Kilmer's character, Chris, gets shot. Now, in the last movie, that character gets shot and taken to, like, a vet to get fixed up, but we never hear anything of him. Mm-hmm. In this one, they need to get on the plane. So he goes to go see his wife, and his wife, played by Ashley Judd, warns him that the cops are coming in. He's in a bit of a disguise kind of thing. But Ashley Judd, this whole movie, she's trying to have an affair. And there's a point where Robert De Niro, like, finds out, and he's like, look, I understand that he's got a gambling problem. Give him another chance. If he fucks up, I will pay for you to relocate somewhere kind of thing. And, like, the cops end up finding out about this affair, which I don't remember how they found out about it. But the cops find out about this affair, and they go to Vegas, and they rough up Hank Azaria, and Alice kind of brought up the scene. Go ahead and say what happened.
Oh, yeah.
Alice? Al Pacino. He's like, he mentions a great ass.
Yeah, so basically what happens is Hank Azaria's character is, having a long-distance affair with Val Kilmer's wife. And they go to him and like, hey, we need to know everything you know. And ultimately they go, when they find out that this heist is going down, they tell him to go pick up Ashley Judd's character and bring them back to the cops. And the cops tell Ashley Judd, like, hey, work with us. But in that scene, apropos of nothing, they're just like, he's like, I don't even know why I got involved with this chick. Like Hank Azaria's like, she's done nothing but trouble. I just found out that she works, she's married to some criminal. Why did I do this? And Al Pacino's like, because she's got a great ass.
Which apparently wasn't even written.
No, it wasn't. So yeah, that was ad-libbed, and that's why Hank Azaria like looks genuinely shocked. But how does he know that Ashley Judd has a great ass? He's never met her. That's apropos of nothing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
But
it's Al Pacino.
So then at the end of the movie, Danny Trejo's in this movie.
Yeah.
Why was Danny Trejo?
He can't shake his tail either.
Why was Danny Trejo the only one that was named Trejo? like his actual name.
I
was like, damn, that's just lazy.
He was actually a pretty good looking dude when he was younger.
I liked how he was in that sweatsuit when he couldn't shake his tail.
When he lied and said he couldn't shake his tail.
That was great.
Dude, the Allstate guy was in this too.
I love that guy. That's President David Palmer from 24.
From 24, yeah. So, yeah, that's another subplot. So in the last movie, you find out at the very end, they when Waingro goes to their driver and the driver calls back and is like, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this. So they just get some other guy. In the TV movie, they just get some guy to be the bank robber getaway driver, right? In this one, throughout the movie, we see the Allstate guy. He's fresh out of Folsom Prison. He's trying to get a job. He's got this guy who owns a restaurant who's being really shitty. He's like, hey, you're going to basically do the bitch work. You're going to do the Charlie work. And you're also going to give me like 10% of your pay because I'm, giving you a job as
Was it only 10%? I thought it was like 40% or something.
Or maybe, I think it might have been like 20%. It was a percentage though, right?
Yeah.
So this whole, he's dealing with it, and his wife is like, I'm so proud of you not going back into crime. And then just through pure happenstance, when Danny Trejo calls, and same thing, it's ultimately because he got tortured by Waingro that he said, he couldn't be in the, in the heist. They just happen to see, Allstate guy in the kitchen, and they're like, hey, we know Allstate guy. We saw him in prison. He was a getaway driver. Let's bring him. And he just decides to do it.
He takes
and
he gives him like the ultimatum. He's like, I need a yes or no now.
Right now. And he's like, okay, fuck it.
Yeah.
And then they go into this like fucking badass scene. So the bank robbery scene has actually been used for like training on like how to actually retreat if you're under fire for like the Marines. They also have used like when Val Kilmer reloads his
that was rifle. Really it's a one long take, and he's like fire, goes in the back, fire, goes, squats down, reload, and then fire. And while that's happening, you see like the windows being like blown out. It's a really great shot.
Yeah, it's an incredible scene, and that scene has been used, like that exact clip has been used in Marine training as proper way to like handle yourself under fire. The other thing that's interesting about this movie is the machine guns. Like anytime that there's gunfire, most of the time what they do on movies is they film the scene and then they add the gunfire in post.
Yep.
In this, they obviously they don't use live ammo, but they actually fire the guns and they just strategically place microphones around the actors and everything else so you can hear everything. But that's why this movie, like, it just sounds so much more frenetic. Like they actually were using rounds there, and it's actually you're hearing the shots. So it sounds different than any other like action scene in most action movies.
It's pretty cool.
It's a great scene. And the same thing happens. Chris gets shot.
Couple things.
Michael.
I want to admit, like, I don't think this scene would come out today. Like, it's just really real. It's just realistic and very visceral. Because like I feel like we've had so many tragic incidents with like gunshots and stuff like that. Like when we think about it now, like with John Wick, it's not quite the same. It's more cartoony compared to like this is like it's very disturbing.
You do see civilians getting shot,
like they're being like
not a ton
shot around and stuff like that, and it's very like a hard scene,
right? And so at one point, I actually I think it's an incredible shot, like or just it's an incredible scene from a filmmaking standpoint, and it's hard to watch because you are seeing just all this destruction. You do see some civilians get shot. But what was weird about this is like there was no chopper, there was no aerial surveillance like there was even in the TV movie. They had a chopper of like following people around at this point. But this one, just because like they were so much more, they had so much more firepower in this. And you see cops die, you see civilians die. At what point do you stop and let them get away? Because it was like $1.2 million or something like that. Or no, it's like $12 million. So like, yes, they got a lot of money, but like the cops are not being responsible in this. Like the cops are doing just as much damage as the bad guys are. The cops are just running around not in cover. They're running around in front of people. They're not really. Eventually, in a parking lot, Al Pacino starts yelling at get people down. But it's like really late. Like a lot of civilians got shot because the cops are just running around, not being in cover. They're running around near civilians as targets. It was a really irresponsible way to work. And like the cops all have like assault rifle styled weapons as well.
Yep.
Excuse me. I just, that made me really uncomfortable. And I think, that was probably supposed to be part of it, but it didn't really make a lot of sense.
No, it didn't. In LA Takedown, it was kind of the same thing where Hannah, actually, he's like telling people to get down. And there's this one scene where I think it's McCollum like turns around and shoots at him. And there's two civilians right in front of him. And he pushes them down and like jumps on top of them. But like,
covers them.
You obviously are the target. Why would you jump on top of them?
The thing is, McCollum was just shooting. He's just trying to get away. And I actually did appreciate that detail a little bit more because the whole thing with at least in the original one, and he says something along the lines like, "I told you, like the city's my whole world, and like I care about the people in the city." Like that shows that he was at least willing to put himself at risk, and like he get down and he puts his body, like he uses his body as a shield for those people.
Right.
Now, granted, they don't get shot. McCollum ultimately gets away with Chris at that moment because he made a choice, and I appreciate that he made a choice to protect the civilians versus getting the bad guy right then and there.
Right.
Where the Al Pacino one, there's a couple points where he yells, "Get down." He shoves like one guy down, but ultimately he's just running around firing blindly as well. And it's like, I did think that's one thing that LA Takedown did better. I do think that Vincent Hanna cared more about the city in that one.
It's different. Like this this Vincent, he's clearly like, okay, so how they pit him is that they're both top dogs of their squad.
Right.
And Pacino, he's out to get whatever whatever Neo is at any cost. Like that's how it's basically at. Like he has been chasing after this guy for like so long in the movie and for so many days. He
But it's days. And no, I get it. Like, that's his job and everything like that. But his whole thing is he does it because he cares about the city. He even says in this one, he says the same thing. Like to his wife, like, I never told you. Like, I always told you you're going to have to share me with the city. And, like, this is, what I do. And I'm not, blah, 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 blah. But when push comes to shove, he didn't seem to care about the city. He cared more about himself and him getting the bad guy versus, like, doing what was right.
Yeah, I feel like he was probably just seeing red at that point, especially after having that coffee break with him. I think it just kind of pushed him over the edge.
And that scene was incredible. Like, we haven't even talked about that scene. That scene takes... the other one and ramps us up to 11.
Oh, yeah.
They did not rehearse that scene.
It was great.
Like, they felt that, once again, because that was the first scene that they filmed together. And they decided not to rehearse it so that way they could, ad-lib a little bit and, kind of play around and be unfamiliar with each other. And so that way that unfamiliarity would be genuine in the scene.
That scene, watching it in the remake, made me wish I didn't see LA Takedown, because
I agree, because I feel like LA Takedown kind of cheapened this one a little bit.
It builds it up where like you think there's gonna be a showdown, because like he's just found his wife is cheating on him, so he gets in his car, he's like driving super angry towards
super angry,
like towards I keep forgetting his name, Neil, and
Neil McCauley.
He drives up to Neil, and it just like kind of like implodes. It's not like a shootout. It's just, let me buy you some coffee. And you're like,
yeah, well, and it was a verbal shit. Like it was a dick measuring contest there,
sure.
But the caliber of acting, and I think that's Pacino doesn't go full on Pacino in that. Like that's the Pacino you think of in the 70s and 80s when you think one of the greatest actors of all time. That really was a fantastic scene. Both Robert De Niro and Al Pacino are they're both measured, but then tough but it's all subtle, and it's just, I mean, you can see why these two people are considered some of the greatest actors of all time in that scene. Like, it was I agree. I think, and I watched these movies literally back to back. So I watched LA Takedown. I had about a 20-minute break while I made lunch and ate lunch. I watched an episode of Letterkenny while I ate, just as a palate cleanser, and then went immediately into Heat. And I do really wish that I had a little bit more time apart. But I also don't I'm glad I didn't watch Heat first, because I think if I watched Heat first, LA Takedown would have been unwatchable.
Trash.
Because it was bad enough as is, but watching it afterwards, I think would have been garbage. Like, I don't think I could have watched it.
No, he definitely would not have gotten through it.
And so basically the main difference at the end of this movie is, Chris, we see kind of like abandons his family after, Ashley Judd kind of warns him. Neil, thinks he's going to get away. He actually convinces Edie to go with him. And John Voight's character, Nate, the fence, calls him and says, hey, this is what's going on. So he ends up going to actually, I think this is before he gets Edie. He goes to the money launderer's house and asks where Wingrow is. The guy's like, I don't know. So he just blows him away. And then he gets Edie. He kind of has a confrontation with her, convinces her to still go to New Zealand with him. They're on their way to the airport when Nate calls him and says, hey, Wingrow's at this hotel. And he is kind of cocky. He's like, I have time, and decides to go after Wingrow. Well, and this time around, he gets up there.
There's a struggle too, though, because he's because he John Voight's like, but if you're smart, like I know you are, this is behind you. He's like, yeah, it is, and he's driving for a bit, and he's like, you see it marinate because he goes through this tunnel. And you just see it, the gears turning in his head. He's like, you know what? And he turns really hard. He's like, fuck it. No, I gotta do this. And she's like, is there time? He's like,
and he says to his girl, he says to Edie, I've got time. So he goes up there and he kills Wingrow right away. So he pulls the fire alarm. He does this thing to find out what room he's in, saying that he is the room service guy, and somebody ordered the food, but they gave him the wrong room number. And he gets up there and he opens the door and just immediately blam 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 kills him. No problem at all.
Yeah.
And then, he gets out and they're so close to LAX, and Al Pacino just follows them to LAX. And I actually thought this scene went on a little too long. I
kind of liked it because there's a bit cat and mouse to even the final fight. Because there's the chasing up to the final fight was a bit long. I'll give you that. But then
so that was a little long. But then but what ultimately ended up happening is they essentially went to this area in LAX that had a dozen giant, probably 8-foot by 10-foot boxes that probably house some sort of generator or something. And it's seriously 10 minutes of just up against the wall, and then they peek around, they don't see one, so then they run to another one, up against the wall, peek around the corner, don't see the other, up against the wall, peek around the corner, don't see the other, up against the wall, peek around. It was 10 minutes of them just being up against a corner.
Well, okay, so how I saw it was this. As soon as I saw Robert De Niro, thought he had the advantage because he was hiding and he used the airplane as coverage to move to mask his sound, which was oh, that's really smart. Then he's waiting, he's okay, I'm gonna pop out. And at that point, I was oh, no, because, cops have reflex trainings. So, any pop-ups, they that's what they train for. Oh, someone comes out of a cover, boom, bam, and shot. Then that's kind of what happens. But I was oh, he clearly is at the disadvantage. And then he saw that there's a light source, so he positions himself so that if Al Pacino looks at him, he'll be blinded by that light. I was oh, that's really interesting and clever. And then he gets around that by it's a really great cat and mouse final fight.
Those little details were good, but that was seriously it was 10 minutes of them just being, looking around corners.
Yeah.
Where it would have been interesting if they just got Al Pacino gets ahead, or not Al Pacino, Robert De Niro gets ahead, and he's over there, and then you see Al Pacino show up, and it's well, shit, he's in there somewhere, and you see him maybe go up against a corner once, and then run to another one. And then you kind of see Al Pacino or Robert De Niro's character do those things that you mentioned, because those are, were interesting details. But it was 10 minutes. And then, Al Pacino. What was also weird is Al Pacino decides to have a shotgun in this thing, and his shotgun has incredible range in this scene. But eventually
Robert De Niro's way far down, and he has a shotgun and it clicks empty. I was what are you gonna do with that? If you had a round, what would you have done?
But he ultimately shoots Robert De Niro's character, and he kind of hangs out with him while he dies. Yeah. But this is a good movie. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's an incredible film, incredibly well acted. There are quite a bit of like Al Pacino moments that I honestly, at this point, just because of like how crazy he is, anytime I hear him screaming after Scarface, I do feel like I kind of roll my eyes a little bit because unfortunately Al Pacino has become kind of a joke nowadays.
Yeah.
And it did make it a little hard for me to take this movie seriously. So he even has a moment when he's like a couple different times where he's dealing with like his criminal informant.
CI, and he's also being very Al Pacino-esque.
Yeah, he just is yelling at his CI and is like, "What the fuck you got for me?" kind of thing. It's like just screaming for no reason, and then like in like scenes where he would make more sense screaming, like when he walks in and he sees the guy that his wife is cheating on him watching his TV, and he's just like,
he's kind of
you're supposed to think I'm supposed to be okay with like the guy that's fucking my wife watching TV. Like that is a scene where it makes more sense to scream, not at your fucking criminal informant. Like
maybe.
Well, I think it goes to show you that he is more invested in his job than his,
Yeah,
personal
I guess
life.
so. I mean, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But still, it's just like I don't like Al Pacino screaming all the goddamn time. So I kind of felt like it cheapened that, and I think that's just watching this from 2019 from the first time. But you guys want to hear a couple interesting
if you also
things?
think about it, his personality, because like Al Pacino screams, he's very like he has like anger tantrums and stuff like that. But like Robert De Niro's character is actually the opposite. Like he's very calm, collected. He's
just in control.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, what Al Pacino said, the reason he has this outburst is he said in the original script that he read that Vincent Hanna was supposed to have a coke problem, and that explains his outburst.
I feel like that would have added to the movie for sure.
Maybe, but ultimately,
that's just something Al Pacino added.
Right.
That's just Al Pacino.
Right. So, did you guys know Keanu Reeves was originally going to play Chris, the character the role that went to Val Kilmer? So they wanted Val Kilmer to do it, but he was filming Batman Forever. But he was able to find time to do his scenes, so then they put it back. But they were going to go with Keanu Reeves.
Keanu's too cool for that role.
I mean, if he did this would have been right off the back of Point Break if he did this. The guy Ted Levine, who played Bosco, who was the character that Michael Rooker played in the original, but kind of like the crime scene investigator, like the number 2 guy on the cop side. He was originally going to play Waingro, but he ended up going to Michael Mann and asked if he can have a different role because he had played Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs, and he felt that he would be typecast if he went from Buffalo Bill to Waingro.
That makes sense.
So he was able to get a cop role instead.
That's cool. And he died.
Yep, he got shot. Let's see if I have anything else.
Did Val Kilmer really need the hair?
No. I don't understand why he had all that long hair.
I feel like it just took away from that character.
Right. But overall, like, this movie was, like, they do put a lot more detail into it. Like, even the opening heist with the armored truck, like, you see them, like, Robert De Niro goes to a hospital to steal
there was a lot more setup to it.
Yeah, he steals the ambulance and the uniforms. You see Val Kilmer goes to some place to get the explosives that they're going to use to blow up the truck, and then also blow up the ambulance that they use as a getaway vehicle. You know, a lot of detail and everything, and that's why I feel like it's cheapened the movie still with the whole slick thing. That they found him just because of that. Like, it's such a stretch, and to think that they would actually spend that much money on it. And one of the other things we didn't talk about, we should probably wrap up in a minute, and they did this in both movies, but you know, the bad guys realize they're being surveillance. They find the bugs that they're using, and so they decide to set up like a counter sting where what they do is they go to a place that they know they're not going to rob, but that forces the cops to go and check it out. And then Robert De Niro's hiding, and he gets photos, and that's how they find out that they're getting chased by the LAPD and not like the feds. And I think so. You know, another cat and mouse thing.
And mouse.
But I mean, it's a good movie. It's just, it was really hard to watch in 2019 and just not take Al Pacino as a joke. At least that's how I took it. It was really hard. You guys made some valid points though, that, you know, with Robert De Niro being cool, calm, collected, Al Pacino being crazy. But I feel like maybe that was something that was done because it was Al Pacino.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can
see that.
Well, even
Yeah.
like so, like Robert De Niro's house, like he's like the way he dresses, it's very like it's just a suit and very minimal, and his house that he was in is just also very like empty.
But his whole thing
and
is he's
functional.
supposed to be willing to walk away within 30 seconds.
Yeah,
That's
he
his
can't have
rule.
anything-
but it's like it does paint a little like opposites to each other, because like his Pacino's house is also like different the way it's not even his house.
Exactly. His wife's
Yeah.
house. All right. Well, I guess it's time to answer the question.
Yes.
Was this a remake that needed?
Yes.
It's definitely better. So, like, I mean that. But if you ask, does it need to be remade? I guess what's impressive is that this is something Michael Mann wanted to make since the late. Like, he basically
Wait,
wanted.
also,
this was his passion project for like 20
is this
years.
the first remade we've done where it's like the same person remade it too?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
it is.
we've done other ones where like the original creator was like an assistant or like a
But
side director or
never
something.
like they've.
Like, so I think the closest we've done is Dawn of the Dead. George Romero helped write the script with
Zack Snyder.
James Gunn.
Oh, James Gunn.
Yeah, James Gunn wrote the script for the remake, and he has a George Romero has a co-writer credit on it. This is probably the third movie that we've done that the remakes are almost identical. When you look at the second one with Robert De Niro like that, so Cape Fear was like honestly like 90% the same. This was I'd probably say it's like 80 to 90% the same as the original.
The unabridged version.
The unabridged version. And there was a third one that we and True Grit, which neither of you guys did. True Grit is like 99% the same. The main difference is just how they deliver the lines. And True Grit, 90% of the movie's at night in the remake, where it's like 90% in the day in the original, which makes a huge difference. But yeah, this is the first one that we've done that is the original guy was involved.
It's interesting.
But yeah, I mean, it is a better movie. Like, if when you look at like doing a slight, enough things differently, like it checks all our boxes.
I think it's what
I mean, if you watch the original one, that's not one where you go, "Hey, this should be remade," but clearly it was a passion project for the directors, which I think is impressive. That he spent 20 years making.
It's
this
essentially
movie,
yeah, like what yeah, like but it's like essentially what you would want in a remake. I would feel like it's like
right.
It's like it kind of expands upon some things. So like we got a bit more subplot on some characters. Like I thought the family relationship with Chris was really touching, and seeing his wife and stuff like that.
Yeah, I didn't mind that. I did like that. I really didn't think the Natalie Portman trying to commit suicide
that
really did much for me.
Really anything. It was just a Natalie Portman.
All right. Well, I think we've talked about this enough. We'll just announce the episode we're going to do next. We're going to do Child's Play next because we got the new one coming out. The day that this episode drops is when the Child's Play remake comes out. So in 2 weeks, we'll be covering Child's Play.
Noise.
Noise. And thank you guys for listening to Remake Rewind. You can check out everything that's Remake Rewind and MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Instagram's kind of where we do most of our stuff, so check us out there at MDXpods. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/MDXpods. Check out our other great podcasts, Ruin My Childhood. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, sport.
Slick.
Bye.
All right, bye.